Hari Om. Starting with invocation. Let us chant the quality of the invocation. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahabhiryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Apyayantu mamangani vapranachachushrotamato balamindriyani cha sarvani. Sarvam brahmaupanishadam maham brahma nirakuryam mama brahma nirakaro dhanirakaranamasta nirakaranam nestu. Tadatmani nirateya upanishadsu dharmaste mahi santu te mahi santu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Yedi manyase subhedeti dabhrame vapi nunam tvam vedha brahmano rupam. Yadasya tvam yadasya deveshvatadumi mamsyamevate manye viditam. Naham manye subedeti ona vedeti vedacha. Yonastad veda tad veda ona vedeti vedacha. Yasya matam tasya matam matam yasya na vedasaha. Avijñātam vijānatam vijñātam avijānatam. Pratibodha viditam madam amrtatvam hi vindate. Atmana vindate viryam vidyaya vindate mritam. Iha cheda vedi tata satyamasti. Nachedi avedin mahati vinashti. Bhuteshu vichitya dhira pretyasman lokat amrita bhavanti.
Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Part 2, Kenopanisad. We saw the thought flow and the introduction to part 2. To summarize, knowledge gives human being the feeling that one is very significant and very important. Knowledge always gives the feeling that I'm very significant and I'm very important because I know. I'm significant, I'm important because I know. The other is not significant The other is not that important because compared to me, they don't know. That ego, knowledge is that which strengthens the ego. Therefore, we always talk about this I know, where the knowing gains a secondary status and the I gains the primary status. I know. The knowledge always gains the secondary status. Knowledge means that which can be explained. Knowledge means that which can be explained. There are so many things in life that cannot be explained. So, in the Upanishadic sense, knowledge means accepting that so many things cannot be explained and being wonderstruck at that mystery is true knowledge. Again, what is knowledge in the Upanishadic sense? Not trying to explain everything. The capacity to understand that so many things cannot be explained and all attempts to explain that is futile, and it is perfectly okay to be leaving it as mysterious, leaving it as something that cannot be elaborated, explained. Because all explanation is only on the surface. This is the attitude of the Upanishad. The attitude of the Upanishad is this: all explanation is only on the surface. The human ego thinks explanations has to be found for everything. It is a human ego that makes a person to believe that everything has to be explained. Everything can be explained. Here he comes and says, leave it at that, because there are so many things that goes unexplained. That which cannot be explained can cause confusion. That which cannot be explained can cause wonderment. In Vedanta, in Upanishad, it doesn't cause confusion. It is wonderment, because there is a clarity that it can never be explained. Therefore, Upanishad's philosophy is wonderment. Summarizing what we discussed yesterday. Philosophy is born in wonder. Yesterday, we said that philosophy is always born in wonderment. Wonderment it is. Religion is always about wonderment. Religion is always about wonderment. The moment you start explaining it, it turns into a science. The moment you try to explain it, that very explanation is science. Explanation means what? Finding a pattern, a system, etc. What is explanation? Explanation means identifying a pattern, identifying a system, and then utility of it. All this comes under explanation. This is an apple. Explain. Okay, explain. In that knowledge, this is an apple. One knowledge of apple could be wonderment. What a beautiful, what an extraordinary piece of creation it is, beyond human capacity. One kind of knowledge is wonderment. Another kind of knowledge is explain an apple. Because explanation means breaking it up into parts. Explain means to analyze. Analyze means to break it up into parts. So that's where in all explanation will be, you can never have a concise explanation. You can never have a precise explanation. You understand? Because concise, precise explanation is not possible. Because very explanation means analysis. Analysis means to break it up. The very meaning of the word analyze means to break it up. You break it up, you break it up, you break it up to an extent where nothing is left behind for you to be in wonderment about it. You continuously break it up, you continuously break it up, you continuously break it up. A time comes where there is nothing to be in wonderment about it. Because you know what is an apple, the physical properties, the chemical properties, the biological properties, what it can be used for, what it cannot be used for. Now, PhD in apple. You have a PhD in apple. And when the apple comes in front of you, that looks like a plastic. Wonderment is gone. This is how worldly knowledge is, makes you think you know everything, but takes away the subtlest aspect of life, which is the wonderment. Upanishad says, leave it at that, because knowing the physical properties, chemical properties, biological properties of an apple, and knowing that out of apple you can make I don't know what all you can make out of apple. Apple jam, apple pudding, apple fruit salad. I don't know what all you can make out of apple. All this knowledge doesn't bring about any inner transformation in you. That knowledge doesn't bring about a transformation. In fact, this kind of approach to knowledge makes it more and more utilitarian. That's why in the introductory sessions to Vedanta, he talks about liberal knowledge and servile knowledge, liberal education and servile education. It is always the wonderment is taken away from that. For everything is seen from the utilitarian point of view. So with the same utilitarian point of view, when you come to God, the question about God also will be asked. What is the question about God you will ask? Define God, explain God, what God can do and what God cannot do. The mystery of God is also God. Because now you know everything about God. More and more and more you know, more and more you become robotic. More and more knowledge is not making you in wonderment. More and more knowledge is making a human being turn more and more robotic. Therefore, all great religions that is born will be always in the eastern side, a Indian origin it will have. All sciences will have its origin from the West. Even though there are different religions from different part of the world, the deepest is in the East, and it will always have the influence of, I won't say influence, it will always have to repeat what is said in the East. What we call as universities today in the East is also a copy of the Western university only. So there's no university, there's only one thing. What is it that is taught there? Knowledge is taught there. No doubt that knowledge is very utilitarian. No doubt that knowledge has made human being to believe they are richer, they are better. No doubt the knowledges that springs from these universities have made human beings to believe they are richer, they are better. They have conquered everything. And yet one thing is, and yet one thing has happened. What is that one thing? The wonderment is gone. So for wonderment, where all people have to go now? You take a person to the Himalayas, also no wonderment. You take the person to the Niagara Falls also, no wonderment. Why? Because the I know, the knowledge turns by breaking it up, turns everything mechanical. Distinct and different is the Upanishadic knowledge. Part 1 of Kenopanisad is Shravana part. So much of knowledge is given. Now we are moving into the actual text. Introduction is over. We are moving into the text. Because more I talk about this, more I will continue the session on introduction today also. Isn't it? Yeah. So much can be spoken about this. Now what is happening is, there is this part 1, Shravana portion of Vedanta. Because the question is asked, the answers are given. Now the student is going back and reflecting on it. Having reflected on it, the person has come to an understanding. Having reflected on it, the person has come to an understanding. So what he is doing now, the teacher is testing the student, whether reflection is happening rightly or not. Shravana has happened. Now that Shravanam has happened, now what was taught in Shravana? Naham manyeshu vede. No, not that. What was said in Shrotrasya? Shrotrasya Shrotram. Shrotrasya Shrotram is what is unobjectifiable subject is Brahman. Shrotrasya Shrotram. What is that Shrotrasya Shrotram means? Unobjectifiable subject. The I. The capital ear. This is Brahman. This is God. Not what you think it is, for which he repeated it 5 times. What did he say for 5 mantras? It is a few words you should know by heart, isn't it? At least a few words you should know by heart. You can't keep referring to the book all the time. Yeah. Tadeva brahmatvam vidhi nedam yadidam upasate. Tadeva brahmatvam vidhi nedam yadidam upasate. Not what you worship. This is Brahman. Not what you worship. Not what you worship. The I is Brahman, and that I is the capital ear, and that I is you. And then he says, in the meaning of the I, do not include body, sense organs, prana, mind, intellect. That's why the small e belongs to the jiva, the capital E belongs to Brahman, Shrotrasya Shrotram, ear of the ear. The capital E refers to Brahman, the small e refers to jiva, and when you said, and when it is said, you are Brahman, don't mistake the jiva part is called as Brahman. So whenever we hear you are Brahman, you are Brahman, you are Brahman, most of the human beings go back thinking that the jiva is called as Brahman. Jiva is not Brahman. Jiva is Mithya. Jiva is Maya. Jiva is Ajnana. Jiva is not Brahman. Jiva is Mithya. Jiva is Maya. Jiva is born of the Ajnana, Moola Vidya. Upanishad calls it as primordial ignorance. Moola Vidya. So when it says I, you are Brahman, the individual you is not addressed as Brahman. That individual you think you are is negated first. Idella Shravanala, they teach. So the individual you is negated. That how does the individual you is negated? The body is not you. The mind is not you. The intellect is not you. How do you know that it is not you? It is not you. It is not you. Because it can be observable. Anything that is observable becomes an object. Since you are observing the body, body becomes an object. Since you are observing the mind, mind becomes an object. Since you are observing the intellect, intellect becomes the object. Since you are observing the world, world becomes the object. In relation to the world, you are the subject. When you start observing yourself, you, the jiva, becomes the object. What remains is the unobjectifiable subject, Brahman. That is known as the capital E. And then he went on to say, this jiva, this body, mind, intellect is all made up of the elements, etc. And they are all matter. Matter means jadam. In English, it's called matter. In Sanskrit, it's called jadam. Jadam means inert. That's why we say inert matter. Matter itself is inert. Why do we have to say inert matter? Because here we are all scientists and politicians and economists sitting here. No. We all have studied about matter in the schools, in the colleges, in the universities, etc. Their matter is not defined as inert. Matter means subject, solid, liquid, gas, matter. So many meanings of matter you have, but not that fundamental meaning of matter would have been taught there. What is that meaning? It is inert. So what is the second lesson here? The body, the mind, and intellect is the observable. Therefore, it has become the object. And that object by nature is jadam, inert. It means you as the jiva is jadam, inert. Then what makes that jada to believe that it has life? What makes the jada to believe it has life? It is experiencing life. It is alive. We also say it is life, it is dead. So what makes this jada to believe that it has life? It says it is because of the combination there appears to be the life. Per se, matter doesn't have life. Per se, Atman Brahman has no expression. Only when these two, when the inert matter and the unobjectifiable subject I combines, something happens, and that is called life. Consciousness. Another important lesson. Idallam part 1 la vandirukku. Now don't ask where we studied all this in part 1. Na? All this we studied in part 1. It means what? Atman by itself is a consciousness which is inconceivable by us, because a consciousness that is not aware of anything, that is Brahman. Here we talk about consciousness that is aware of something. So that combination, what is the combination? The combination of Jada and Brahman, only when it combines, that Jadam, because of the combination, borrows sentiency as it were from Brahman. Because of borrowing, because of the proximity to Brahman, because of the combination of it, the consciousness borrows its sentient consciousness, lends it. From the angle of consciousness, we have to say it is lending. From the angle of jiva, we have to call it as borrowing. From the standpoint of jiva, it is borrowing. I know that you are rina at birth, they say. You are indebted at birth. Because at birth itself, we have borrowed. What did you borrow? Sentiency you have borrowed. Sentiency you have borrowed. Down the line, we are worrying about borrowing from the banks and all. Yeah, banks from the other. Here we are talking about borrowing. The very sentience itself is borrowed. Because Atman by itself is not understandable as to how it can be conscious without knowing anything. Without anything being there, how can it be that? That is so Brahman is one. Mithya world is Satyam, Brahman seems to be Mithya, isn't it? Actually, Brahma Satyam, Jagat Mithya is Upanishad. Our Upanishad says, our Upanishad will say, Brahma Mithyam, Jagat Satyam. Yeah. Our Upanishad, there are two Upanishads now. Prasad, we don't know what Upanishad we are studying. One Upanishad says, Jagat Satyam, Brahma Mithyam. Another Upanishad says, Brahma Satyam, Jagat Mithyam. But sir, we found a middle path, sir. Hodgepodge of everything, isn't it? That is also Satyam, this is also Satyam. That is also Mithyam, this is also Mithyam. Highly confused category, not knowing what to do with anything. So, the very Atman is by itself, what is it? Is inconceivable. And only when the Jadam and consciousness combines, there is this scintillating expression of life, he says. And then again, we went on to say, knowing I am Brahman can never knowing that I am Brahman. I have experienced Brahman is not possible at all. Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam. Knowing I am Brahman is not possible at all, because knowing is an event in time and space coordination. The time space causation coordinates, you can know something. Brahman doesn't fit under the time space causation coordinates. Mapla, they have that latitude, longitude, two things, no? Latitude and longitude coordinates, which you can spot something. So if you have to spot something, you need coordinates. All experience needs coordinates. What are the coordinates that is needed for all experience? Time, space, causation. All experience needs this coordinates of time, space, and causation. Brahman is not an experience in time, space, causation coordinates. Meaning, you cannot say, I have experienced Brahman. All this is sufficient. This kind of explanation is very sufficient for a Uttama Adhikari. For Uttama Adhikari, this is enough. He will take it up, he or she, doesn't matter. That Uttama Adhikari will take it up, sit and contemplate upon it. Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati happens. And then there are another type of Adhikari, Manda Adhikari, mediocre students. And then there is the third type, Adama. Adamaku story sonadam puriyum. Adama has to be told by a story. Part C will come 3 and 4, there will be a story session. Yarku story mulema solli kodukano? Who will be taught through Amar Chitra Katha? Imagine in this classroom, we say, we will do this Amar Chitra Katha, no? What will happen? Amar Chitra Katha, we understand, no comics. So, part 1, Uttam Adhikari. Because it is very clear what unobjectifiable subject, the substratum of creation, unobjectifiable subject, the substratum of creation, all this is Brahman. Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. Uttam Adhikari, over. Now, Madhyam Adhikari is what part 2 enters. Madhyam Adhikari, mediocre student. most of us will fall under the part 2 category. Madhyamadhikari. We are neither Adama nor we are Uttama. We belong to the Madhyama. Madhyama means average in Artha. Mediocre students, average student, mediocre. So, to that average student, testing is done. The teacher is testing. Adi Shankara, in his introductory bhashya to part 2, he says, what is the teacher doing in part 2? He gives an example of you plant a post. You plant 2 posts to tie the string to dry your clothes. What do you do? What do you do? Shravanala, what do you do? You dig the pit, you plant it, you fill it back, you cement it, etc. And then what do you do? Is it over with that? Is it over with that? What do you do after that? You will shake it. Shake it to see whether it is stable. Correct? Huh? And the string type stable convince another, you will tie the string, isn't it? Before you tie the string, you want to check. What do you want to check? Has it stabilized? So what is he doing in this part 2? The language of contradictions and looking at the student reactions, he is shaking the pole. Shaking the pole means shaking the intellect. When he's shaking the intellect, you know whether the knowledge, if you are not confused, it means your knowledge is stable. When he's shaking it and if you are confused, you know what does it mean? Go back to basics again and again. So every now and then the teacher, the guru will come up with statements. Every now and then the guru will come up with contradictory statements. Every now and then the guru will come up with conflicting statements. They will come up with the language of contradictions. For what? To test the student's buddhi. Intellect stabilize check. How to check? Post shake panna. You can check, you can understand the example of the post. And this is not my example. This is the example Adi Shankara gives in his bhashya. To distract slightly, for one Upanishad, Adi Shankara did 2 commentaries, that is Kenopanisad. 2 commentaries he wrote on this Upanishad. One Upanishad is word by word, another is sentence by sentence. So word by word he has commented, sentence by sentence also he has commented. 2 bhashyas of Adi Shankara you will find for this Upanishad. Very beautiful, very beautiful Upanishad this is. So what does he do there? In that introduction, Shankara says, why is Guru talking like this? 2 reasons. The first reason is what we saw yesterday. What is the first reason? The Guru's testing. The Madhyamadhikari is trying to understand it intellectually. Now, what is the definition of a Madhyamadhikari? Uttamadhikari wants to pay the price to know it. Madhyamadhikari wants to understand it intellectually. Are you able to understand the difference between Uttamadhikari and Madhyamadhikari? Adhikari you will understand, isn't it? Adhikari means a qualified student. The Uttamadhikari will be willing to pay the price to know it, to understand. The Madhyamadhikari will only want an intellectual explanation. So the Madhyamadhikari is stuck at the level of intellectual explanations. That's why we went through an elaborate discourse yesterday. Are you able to connect now? He went through, so the student is more satisfied in explanation. my explanation is correct. What a satisfaction you get, isn't it? Yeah. Group discussion, I gave the right answer, sir. What a satisfaction. Yeah. அப்புறம் அங்க ஃபைட் வேற அதுல ஃபைட் வேற, அதுல மர்டர் வேற, isn't it? அது 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 உத்தம மத்தியமா அதமாக்கு கீழே ஒரு கேட்டகரி அது, isn't it? Somewhere, that's why I always say sattva, rajas, tamas. Yeah, sattva, rajas, tamas. வேதாந்தா கிளாஸ் ஸ்டூடெண்ட், அது ஒரு ஃபோர்த் கேட்டகரி. அது எந்த கேட்டகரியிலே ஃபிக்ஸே பண்ண முடியாத ஒரு கேட்டகரி அது. இந்த ஒரு குரூப் டிஸ்கஷன், அதுல ஒரு டிபேட், அதுல ஒரு ஃபைட், அதுல ஒரு மர்டர், isn't it? விஜய், அதானப்பா ஆச்சு நேத்திக்கு. That's what happened yesterday. Madhyam Adhikari, the guru who is testing. What is the test? Is the understanding stable? What is a stable understanding? Wherever the person gets an intellectual comprehension, the guru immediately breaks it. Are you able to follow now? Whenever the student says, fantastic explanation, we have never heard anything like this. Today I got a glimpse of it. Next class, Deepika, utterly confused. So you will not know whether to start from body, mind, intellect all over again, isn't it? So some statement will be told where you have to go back to body, mind, intellect. So the Madhyam Adhikari, in the Madhyam Adhikari, the teacher has to test the student. So what is the test? How to test? He has to test, he has to shake the intellect. And how the intellect will be shaken? How the intellect will be shaken? By conflicting, contradictory statements. When conflicting, contradictory statements are given, we will become like Arjuna. We will become like Arjuna. Say, Tadekam vada nischitya yena shreyoham apnuyam. Tell me in one word clearly. Mati pesa kudadu, he will say. Don't keep mati pesa. Tell me in one word clearly, precisely what you are. Because the Madhyam Adhikari is interested in an intellectual understanding. That intellectual understanding itself, the Madhyam Adhikari misunderstands it as experience of Brahman. Are you able to follow? The intellectual understanding itself will be misunderstood as, I know it. The Guru knows you have not known it. The Guru knows you have not known it. That is why in this tradition, it is the Guru that has to declare, you are knowledgeable. You should not declare yourself. Yeah. Vasishthar Vayala Brahma Rishindradada. That's what the tradition is. It is the Vasishta that has to certify Vishwamitra as Brahma Rishi. He has experienced it. He knows it by himself. No, who is Vasishta to certify? No. It is the Guru that has to. It is the Guru that has to certify. Therefore, Madhyama Adhikari, the teacher is testing the student. And how the student is tested? The pole is erected. The pit is dug. The pole is erected. It is filled, cemented, dried up, looks stable, but you will not get carried away by the look that it is stable. Correct? You will not get carried away by the look that it is stable. You want to shake it. Once you shake it, you know the strength. Shaking the intellect of the student to test if the knowledge is steady. You're able to follow now why he is doing all this? All Shastras do it. Here we are having a direct opportunity to discuss about it. This is the method employed in Bhagavad Gita. This is the method employed in Upanishad. This is the method is employed in everywhere. Pole should be firm. That's all. Pole here refers to the intellect. Is the knowledge firm? How do you know the knowledge is firm? Whatsoever word is used, you will understand what is meant by that. Again, I repeat. Whatsoever word is used, you will understand what is meant by that. Because that much of study and reflection has been done. Third, hesitation to drop indicates the knowledge is shaky. Madhyamadikari, again. Hesitation to drop the word is an indication that knowledge is shaky. That's why people say, I have understood, sir, but it is not working. Guru will say, you have not understood. Are you able to follow? Third thing. Hesitation indicates knowledge is shaky. And when the Guru sees the students hesitating to what? Hesitating to what? Hesitating to drop the world. Why there is so much of hesitation to drop the world? Why there is so much of fear to drop the world? Why so much of uncertainty about dropping the world? Knowledge is not yet firm. Therefore, what he does, he goes on reinforcing it. He goes on pile driving it. So, when the knowledge is shaky, he has to test. He has to reinforce. Also, he has to reinforce because the student is still having hesitation. What is the hesitation? What is the hesitation? Hesitation to drop the world. Hesitation to drop the materiality. Hesitation to drop the sensuality. There is an hesitation. Why hesitation? Because it is still appearing meaningful. Still it is appearing meaningful. So what is the mediocre student does? Mediocre student will want to have the benefit of both. He will want to have the world and worldly sensualities and materialistic life, at the same time Brahman also. They will want to have the best of both. Sunil, don't try that. Huh? Best of both will not be there. Either this or that. You can't serve two masters at the same time, Ramatirtha. You can't serve two masters. Hesitation to drop. Why the hesitation to drop? Because the knowledge is not it. The knowledge is very shaky still. It's not yet stabilized. So wherever he sees the students hesitating, and he sees a lot of hesitations in the students to drop. Therefore, he wants to help them also. Therefore, another reason to do this. That is the shift of thought from part 1 to part 2. Hesitation. Most of the student has these two problems. What are the two problems? They will want to intellectually understand, be satisfied with that intellectual understanding, and frightened of leaving the world behind. It's a combination of two. Again, I repeat. Who is the mediocre student? A mediocre student is one who gets satisfied with an intellectual understanding of Brahman, at the same time frightened of dropping the world. So, these two, when he sees, he's going to give a very big layer. What is that? Hammer. He's going to take the hammer and break the head of the mediocre student. Part 2, mantra 4, he is going to do that. Ihacheda vedi adasatyamasti achedi havedir mahadi vinashti. He is taking the hammer and breaks the head of the Madhyama student. But somehow we will regather the head and unite it back. Yes. He will break it and we will unite it back. He will break it and we will unite it back. I don't know who's going to win this race. Somebody will win, isn't it? This is part two. Therefore, it checks whether the knowledge is firm. How do you know the knowledge is firm? Words will not confuse you. You will not be afraid of. You will not be satisfied with a mere intellectual appreciation, understanding, also no hesitation. Uttam Adhikari doesn't have all these problems. Mediocre Adhikari, mediocre student has all these difficulties. To such a student who is a mediocre Madhyam Adhikari, certain teachings, the teacher starts all over again. Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate order Upanishad should have been over, logically speaking. Logically speaking, should have been over by then. Because it is clearly established. Still, what is the continuity of the discussion? Still, what is the discussion being continued? The Adhikaritvam have changed. From Uttam Adhikari, maybe the Uttam Adhikari got up and left. Just dramatically visualize. Narayana. Yeah, it doesn't literally happen like that, but dramatically visualize it. The Uttam Adhikari would have gotten up and left. Now, who's sitting behind? The Madhyam Adhikari sitting behind, nodding his head. Yes, I have understood. Yeah. And then he's looking so penetratively into the head that is shaking. It's not the nod of understanding. It is shakiness. From the student, it looks like the nod of understanding. What the teacher sees, what the guru sees the shakiness in that. The guru is seeing the shakiness in that. The guru is seeing the hesitation in dropping the guru is seeing the hesitation in dropping it. Therefore, what he does, he starts again. And when he starts again, he beautifully starts. So to summarize, Atma is Brahma. Part 1. Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. What is known as Atman in relation to the individual is known as Brahman in the. What is known as Atman in relation to the individual will be called as Brahman in relation to the totality. It is like the pot space and the total space. Even though space cannot be divided into pot space and the total space, for discriminatory purposes, it appears to be so. Therefore, in relation to the individual, it is called Atman. In relation to the Jiva, it is called Atman. In relation to the totality, it is called Brahma. It's Atma and Brahma. I am Atma, Brahma. I am Atma, Brahma. Uttam Adhikari has gotten up and left to do Nididhyasana. What is a Nididhyasana? I am Atma, Brahma. Now, who's left behind? We are all left behind now because nobody got up and left. Yes. Even those who get up and leaves are fatigued. Something he is, yeah. Holocaust of attachment birth of the thought. Now he is talking something about this. This is also not clear. In the evening, I will be talking to somebody else on Bhaja Govindam Anshu. That also will not be clear. I don't know why she comes and sits there also. But poor thing, I only dragged her in. So she came and sat there also. I will follow the Madhyama Adhikari. Mediocre student. What is the definition of a mediocre student? Satisfied with intellectual appreciation, contented with intellectual satisfaction. What is called as fixed contentment. Satisfied with a mere intellectual appreciation. That's called fixed contentment. Second is hesitating to drop the word. Hesitation, lot of hesitation in dropping. Sir, anyway, in all the classes, you have only said it is attitude only. No, sir. So physically, I will keep, attitude wise, I will drop. Prasad. Correct? Huh? Attitude wise, I will keep attitude wise, I will drop everything. Physically, I will keep everything because ultimately, anyway, it is only attitude, no? Venkatachalam. இதெல்லாம் மத்தியம அதிகாரியினுடைய justification. So the Guru sees all that. So when the Guru is seeing that, he penetrates, he cuts through. When he cuts through a few mantras that he is using to cut through. Now we will chant the first mantra of part 2. Part 2, mantra 1. Padima.
यदि मन्यसे सुवेदेति तभ्रमेवापि नूनं त्वं वेत्थ ब्रह्मणो रूपम् यतस्य त्वं यतस्य देवेष्वथनुमीमांस्यमेव ते मन्ये विदितम् यदि मन्यसे सुवेदेति तभ्रमेवापि नूनं त्वं वेत्थ ब्रह्मणो रूपम् यदस्य त्वं यदस्य देवेष्वथनुमीमांस्यमेव ते मन्ये विदितम्.
If you think I know well, you know perhaps very little indeed. The form of Brahman you have known relates to that of gods. Therefore, now that which is to be known, I think, is still to be ascertained by you. Very beautiful mantra. If you think I know well, you know perhaps very little indeed. The form of Brahman you have known relates to that of gods. Therefore, now that which is to be known, I think, is still to be ascertained by you. Suveda. Suveda na I know well. Veda na knowing. Suveda na I know well. I know thoroughly. I know completely. Iti. If you think manyase, what happens? Surely, noonam. Surely, you know very dabram. Dabram means little. Little knowing is no knowing. Little knowing is wrong knowing. That wrong knowing is ulta knowing. Ignorance it is. 2 plus 2, I am very close, sir. Today 1.5 I know. 2 plus 2 is what? 2 plus 2? 4. Clear. Up to date, sir, 2 plus 2 is 3.5, I have understood. Only that 0.5 is it, that also very soon I will understand. So the conclusion that you have come to today is what? 2 plus 2 equals 3.5. What is it? Closer to right understanding. Huh? Is it closer to right understanding? What will you call that? Vijay, Suluba. Huh? Is it closer to right understanding? 2 plus 2 equals 3.5 is little understanding, means noonam, no understanding, which is ignorance, which is ulta understanding. Isn't it? The Brahm. Noonam, surely. If you think I know well, you surely know very little. The Sanskrit word surely, just to make it not very attacking, he has put it as perhaps. Yeah. Noonam, surely you don't know. Surely you don't know. Because half truth half lie is half truth. All these things, all this play of words don't work here. If you think I know well, you know perhaps very little indeed. One statement. Second statement, 3 statements. He doesn't explain, just 3. He just makes statements. First statement, if you think I know well, for surely you know very little indeed. Statement number 2, the form of Brahman you have known relates to that of gods. Small g, plural. Brahmana Rupam that you know is Anya Deveshu, relating to other gods. The form of Brahman you have known is relating to other gods. Anya Deveshu. Guru God Purila, one God itself we are not understanding. Anya Deveshu, it is relating to other gods. So the form of Brahman you have known relates to that of gods in plural. I don't know what logic you find between the two. He's concluding now. Therefore, I don't know what logic you have found. The third statement is a conclusion. What is the conclusion? Therefore, now that which is to be known, I think, is Mimamsyam. Mimamsyam means yet to be known, is still to be ascertained by you. Mimamsyam, yet to be known by you. If part 1 is so useful for Shravana, part 2 takes it to the next height of reflection. Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. I told you 5 times, and you are thinking that as Brahman. What I called as not Brahman, you are nodding your head with understanding that is Brahman. Are you able to understand the second statement? Will come like that. Previously he said, Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. Yadidam Upasate means Anya Deveshu, the other gods. Now, who are those other gods? What they are and all, we will see later. First statement. What? 5 times I told you. Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. I told you 5 times. And you are also nodding your head, saying that yes, I understood. Actually, what are you nodding your head as understanding? What I am saying as not Brahman, you are understanding it as Brahman and saying yes. Are you able to follow? Go walk in the direction of the east, you are nodding your head and walking in the direction of the west. I don't know how to even, what example can you give for this? Anybody? Vijay? Vijay Nath, nee illappa. Yeah. Vijay is the vice person of Balaji group. Sunil, correct? Vijay is the Mahatma of Balaji group. Anala and the Vijay na kekra. Vijay Nath unna illappa. What example can you give to this? What example can you give? Where he is saying Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. What all you think as gods, he is breaking it up and saying it is not God. You are saying, yes, I have understood what? I have understood what? What all you told me as not God, I am understanding it as God. It means what? It means what? You didn't hear me at all. You didn't listen to me at all. You are simply replaying thoughts in your head, and you are shaking your head for the thoughts replay that is going on in your head. That is why that person is called a mediocre student. Are you able to follow? He picks up one or two words and he makes his own connections. Are you able to follow the fallacy of thinking now? A mediocre student is one who will pick up random words here and there, and they will try to make their own connection. And when you make your own connection, that looks like Upanishad to you, isn't it? That looks like Upanishads to you. Here, these people are doing it. What are they doing? The form of Brahman you have known relates to that of gods. Therefore, now that which is to be known, I think is still to be ascertained by you. The Guru points out the Guru is pointing out the fallacy. What is the fallacy? The gods. If you say, I have understood Brahman, thinking means here intellectual understanding. Again, each and every word has to be decoded in the Upanishad. If you think here means an intellectual understanding. If you say, I have intellectually understood Brahman, therefore I know Brahman, then you know nothing at all. Instead of saying you know nothing at all, he's saying you know very little indeed. Why? Because you can never know it. The very fundamental principle is you can never know it, and the person says, now I know it. What do you know? That it cannot be known. Are you able to follow? Vijay. He says, you cannot, the student says, yes, now I understand. What? It cannot be known. God is formless. Now I know the definition of God. What is the definition of God? God is formless. If a person says phonetically God is with form, this person says God is formless. Now, God is formless has become an intellectual definition to define God. So he says God is formless because that formlessness has become a form in the head, an intellectual form in the head. Formlessness may not be with the form with the nose, the ears, the eyes, and all that, but still formlessness is becoming a form in the head. Therefore, he says, if you think you know Brahman well, you do not know it at all. Why? Because you can never claim I know. The very claiming is ignorance according to Upanishad. Again, I repeat. According to the Upanishad, the very claim that I know is ignorance. Therefore, you can never make a claim of saying, I know. It is so vast. How can you know? Because all knowing is limited by the capacity of the instrument. Are you able to follow? Narayana. All knowing is limited to the capacity of the instrument. The human eyes sees a particular spectrum of light. So all our seeing is defined by the spectrum of that light. Now there is a pigeon here. That pigeon has extra perception because it can see ultraviolet also. It means something the pigeon is seeing which I can never ever know. Or something that I am seeing the pigeon can never ever know. Therefore, I can never say I know fully, neither the pigeon can say I know fully. For all knowing is limited by the capacity of your instruments. Are you okay till now? All knowing is possible through the instrument, and all instruments are limited in its capacity. Therefore, all knowing is limited knowing. Is there a possibility where you can have an infinite capable instrument? It can never exist it can never exist, because an instrument that can recognize infinity can never exist. That is why we go on refining our instruments. Science goes on refining our instruments so that somehow we can grasp it. Science discovered microscope. Science discovered telescope. Both are aimed at what? Both are aimed at increasing the capacity of your instrument. If the capacity of the instrument is increased, it means if you develop a capable instrument, that capable instrument can perceive the total infinite. They said everything is made up of atoms. And then they said atom is made up of protons, electrons, neutrons. That's it. And then they started breaking it. Then came subatomic particles. And when they broke into the subatomic particles, another infinity went into that. So on the one side, you go on breaking it up. Logically speaking, it should end up in zero, isn't it? But life doesn't agree to your intellectual, to the human limited chicken intellect logic. The life is not the totality. The Brahman is not bound by the human logic. That's why if you break it up, instead of it becoming zero, it is becoming that much more complex. Then they said, okay, one person went into the telescope. Another person went into microscope. Telescope Lord Brahma nu peru. Microscope Lord Vishnu. Vijay, are you able to understand the symbolism? Because they wanted to check the beginning and the end of Shiva. So Brahma went high and high into the cosmos, trying to understand. Vishnu went deeper and deeper. Two visions you can have about. One is the telescope view, another is the microscope view. But both are instruments, and both the instruments are limited by nature, and that instrument, the knowledge that those instruments provide, can never be complete, ultimate. Therefore, you can never say, I know well. நல்லா புரிஞ்சிச்சு சார் எனக்குன்னு சொல்லவே முடியாது. Sunil, you can never ever say, I have understood it well. I have understood it well. You can never ever say that. If you think you know well, you know nothing. That is statement number 2. What you see as Brahman is Anyadeva, the other gods. What you see as Brahman is Anyadeveshu. The form of Brahman you have known relates to that of gods. Gods in plurality, we have seen it very clearly. What? Gods in plurality, gods in plural is always explained as a amsha, a part of the total. Gods in plural refers to the amsha. The amsha means a part. Amsa. Amsa means a part. The part should not be misunderstood as the whole. Carefully follow two logic. ரெண்டு logic இருக்கு இதுல. Narayana. The part should not be misunderstood as whole. Number one. Second, all the addition of parts put together will not become the whole. Two beautiful things in this Upanishad. A part cannot be misunderstood as the whole. Logically speaking, all the parts put together should become the whole, no? Mathematically speaking, it is the most absurd statement to say parts put together will not be the parts put together will become the whole. Correct? Mathematically speaking, maths teacher parts put together will not be the whole. 0 mark you will get, isn't it? He'll put one big 0 and say go back. What do you mean? What is 10? 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. So all the parts put together becomes the whole. Here he says no. The part is not the whole. All the parts put together also cannot become the whole, because you put all the gods together, it will not become Brahman. You put all the gods together, it will not become, you cannot say equals Brahman. The disciple here has gone into an ecstatic state. The ecstatic state beauty, he's getting drowned in that. He's getting drowned in that, which is going to be the downfall. So the Guru is lifting that person up. That ecstatic state itself is too difficult to comprehend unless you have gone into that ecstatic state. What is that ecstatic state? Ecstatic state of the confluence of the mind and intellect. The disciple, see, if you have a guru like the Kenopanisad, the Guru explaining it so well, what will happen? You will definitely go into an ecstasy. And what is that ecstasy? The confluence of mind and intellect. The mind by itself can reach the acme of devotion. The peak of devotion it has reached. The intellect the intellect is soared to the peak of knowledge. Imagine the peak of devotion and the peak of knowledge combination. Oh my God. My hair is standing on end thinking at that state, ecstasy. What a wonderful state it is. That wonderful state itself, the student misunderstands it as Brahman. Experience of self-realization. Are you able to follow? Guru is pointing out to say, no. Don't get into this. You are just being carried away by the instruments. You are just getting carried away by the instruments. Do not fall a prey to that. The disciple has surrendered with, the disciple here is full of Shraddha, devotion, surrendered to the master. And the Upanishadic master has so exhaustively analyzed the disciple's mind and intellect together is in that ecstasy now. And the ecstasy misunderstand பண்ணிக்கிறது mediocre student. You are a mediocre student. When are you going to get to the state? Are you able to follow? This is the mediocre student. According to the Upanishad, this is the mediocre student. What is that mediocrity here? the combination of these two, he is misunderstanding. Innocently, he is believing. Innocently, he is misunderstanding it to be the ecstasy of self-realization. Therefore, he is saying, I know Brahman. When he is saying, I know Brahman, he is saying, I have attained self-realization. Are you able to follow? When he is saying, I know Brahman, he is saying, I have attained self-realization. The guru is looking at you saying, what do you mean you have attained the self-realization? Nothing has happened. For instruments, any instrument-based knowledge is terrestrial, worldly, temporary, mithya. Again, any terrestrial, any instrumental-based knowledge is mithya. So, the Brahma Anubhava also will be a mithya at some point of time, because half an hour later, 1 hour later, the person will say, I got a glimpse of it, sir, and I lost it. Now I want to get it again. You attain the knowledge of Brahman, you can never get out. There is no glimpses of Brahman and all possible. It's not that I can be in Brahman. This person, people talk about their gurus, no? My guru was in Samadhi for 2 hours. So for 2 hours, he was with Brahman, and rest of the 22 hours, he is living with us. 2 hours with Brahman, and rest of the time with us. All these things don't happen. All these things don't happen. Therefore, he beautifully saying, to attain enlightenment means leaving mind and intellect behind. Leaving mind and intellect behind is what he talks as an example in the commentary he gives, leaving the footwear outside. When you leave the footwear outside and come into the classroom, when you leave the footwear outside and you enter a place of worship, what does leaving it behind means? Leaving the instruments behind. And when you leave the instruments behind, you are in a zone of nowhere. You are in a zone of nowhere. Because all along you are being so dependent on the instrumental knowing, and now the instruments are left behind. Suddenly you are in a zone where you really do not know whether you are hallucinating Brahman, or you are in deep sleep, or you are actually gone mad, or you are actually evolving. You really don't know. The Guru says, don't worry, it's a wonderful state to be in. That is not madness. As you are today, you are in madness, not that state. Again, I repeat. He's saying, as you are today, you are mad. Not in that state. Therefore, it is mistaken for realization. It is mistaken for God realization. What is the mistake? An ecstatic state of the ideal blend of mind and intellect, the confluence. See, all along, both are in conflict with each other. Mind says, I want this. Intellect says, dangerous. Intellect says, this is the right thing to do. Mind says, I don't like it. Rivalry. Mind and intellect will always have an eternal rivalry amongst them. Mind says, I like it. Intellect says, dangerous. Intellect says, this is beneficial. Mind says, I don't like it. Both are in conflict with each other. Now, he has resolved all those conflicts and the instruments are in confluence. And that wonderful state of confluence is misunderstood as realization. The Guru wants here by saying, what all I told you as Tadeva Brahmatvam Vidhi Nedam Yadidam Upasate. What all I told you as not Brahman, you are understanding that to be Brahman. What all I understood as, what all I explained as not Brahman, you are misunderstanding that to be Brahman. Therefore, very beautiful mantra. He says, Yadi manyasesu vedeti dabramevapi nunam tvam veta brahmano rupam. Yadasyatvam yadasya deveshvatanu mimamsyameva. Mimamsyameva. You don't know it fully. Mimamsana, knowing it through the, tomorrow also we will be studying this mantra only. Don't worry, we are not concluding the mantra. Tomorrow also we will be studying it some more. Mimamsa means understanding it guided by the Vedas is Mimamsa. Without guided by Mimamsa Vedas, it is only pure Tarka Nyaya, logic reasoning. If your logic and reason is guided by the Vedas and the Upanishads, that is called Mimamsa. If Mimamsa, if it is not guided by Vedas, Vedanta, then it is only called as ordinary logic and reasoning. Ordinary logic and reasoning means worldly logic and worldly reasoning. Manye viditam. This Anya Deva, you have misunderstood as viditam. Again, these two words, viditam, aviditam. Do you remember these two words? Where did we hear viditam, aviditam? These two words, viditam, aviditam. Two beautiful words. Again, he's playing with those two words, viditam, aviditam. So he says, what you think as Brahman relates to that of gods. If you think I know well, you know nothing at all. Therefore, that which is to be known, I think you still don't know it. I think you don't know it now. What does it mean? Go back to part 1 and start. Srotrasya sostram manaso mano yad vachoha vachaho saho pranasya pranaha chakshusas chakshu atimuchya dhiraha. A few people, those dhiraha, the wise one, the courageous one. Dhiraha means the courageous one. Even though we translate it as wise one, dhiraha means courageous. தமிழ்ல கூட தீரன்னு சொன்னா என்ன அர்த்தம்? அதுக்கு தைரியசாலின்னு அர்த்தம், isn't it? The word dhira means courageous one. Those few courageous one, adimuchya dhiraha, those courageous one attained pretyasma loka amrita bhavanti. Those courageous one attained to that state. Those courageous ones got into the state. Go back to that. If you think Anya Deveshu, you have understood it as Brahman. Now the benefit of doubt, you have to give it to whom? The student is saying, I have understood. The Guru is saying, I think you have not yet understood. The benefit of doubt is given to whom? The Shishya gives it to the Guru and says, maybe what he is saying is right. The benefit of doubt should not be given to the Shishya. The benefit of doubt is given to the Shishya. Now who becomes wrong? Yeah, the Guru becomes wrong. அவருக்கே புரியல, சம்டைம்ஸ் அவருக்கு கூட புரியாதுன்னா then lost it. அவ்வளவுதான். அதுக்கப்புறம் forget the Upanishad, isn't it? Therefore, so I think what is to be known is not yet known to you. With this, we conclude for today and we'll continue with mantra 1 tomorrow. Thank you.